Okay, hello everyone and welcome to the National Maritime Museum. My name's Greg Brown, I'm one of the astronomers of the Royal Observatory Greenwich. Thank you for coming to our event this evening. In a moment I will introduce you to our fantastic speaker, but before I begin, in the very unlikely event that the fire alarm goes off, what you need to do is just head towards the doors at the back of the lecture theatre, and the people in the blue jackets, they are the ones who will guide you towards the exit. It's time for me to introduce our speaker already. We are thrilled today to have Josh Dury, an extremely accomplished astrophotographer who has won numerous awards, not least of which is being shortlisted in our very own astrophotography competition, the Astronomy Photographer of the Year, 3 times, which is an incredible achievement in and of itself. On top of that, he is an author of the 52 Assignments Night Photography book, which you can get copies of in our shop after the event if you would like to. Finally, he is also a delegate for Dark Skies International, a group of campaigns for public access to a clean night sky. And that is precisely what he's going to be talking about today in his talk. Can you please welcome Josh Dury.
Thank you. First of all, before I begin, guys, I just want to say thank you very much for making the time to come this evening. I know we're under extraordinary circumstances at the moment with a heat wave and the busy summer months, so I appreciate your time, so thank you very much. We'll begin with the title of this talk, that is Our Changing View of the Universe. So I know Greg's already done an introduction already, but I've just prepared a slide here just in case. So I'm very delighted to have the title, that is an internationally acclaimed, award-winning landscape astrophotographer. So some of the images you're going to see in this presentation have been endorsed by none other than NASA, Apollo 11, the European Space Agency, and even a scientific journal. I also act as a best-selling author for the title 52 Assignments Night Photography, but also acting as an ambassador for some photographic brands, just to name a few here, Sigma and NiSi, but also partners with some relatively well-known brands, including Canon, for example. But for me, the most important one, which is the core to my work, is acting as a delegate for Dark Sky International and campaigning for dark skies. So, as Greg mentioned, I've been very fortunate throughout the years to come back to the Royal Museum Greenwich. Looking back to my early days in 2017, having your first image shortlisted. You know, taking me on a journey through an education to a degree and meeting, and this is the most important thing for me, is a community of like-minded astrophotographers. I'm sure you may well have been to the astrophotography exhibition here, and to meet and see images of some quality astrophotographers from around the globe who share one vision, that is the night. So it's really lovely to be back here once again. Thank you, Greg. I wanted to put this statement out here. In my time, over the past 3 decades of imaging the night sky, I have been fortunate to live in a dark sky place. However, over the past 3 decades, we are seeing things change, and very fast. So not only light pollution, which is becoming more aware in light of the environmental crisis, we also have the double-edged sword of satellite technology, but also a new technology coming onto the scene involving mirrors. We'll touch on that this evening. I wish to present this image here. This photograph is taken from the International Space Station, documenting our country, the United Kingdom at night. And to put this into perspective, the light you see on this image isn't just pretty lights. This is light shining upwards into our night sky. I can tell you, I'm based over here in the southwest of England, and you can see that skies in general are a bit darker. But you've only got to look across the continent towards France, and you see all of these patterns and shapes. emerging from down here on Earth. But to see this context on a graph here, I just wanted to point out these brighter red and white regions in particular from our major towns and cities. And this just puts into perspective, when comparing that to, say, our oceans, how light polluted our country really is. And I've known some great conservationists in my time who are beginning to address and advance the dark sky movement. But really, this was the beginning to realize that our connection with the universe is dwindling fast. And this is indicated by what is called the Bortle Scale Index. So the way this is measured is on a scale from 1 through to 9. So if you can imagine, if we go back to the map just momentarily, anywhere within a dark region, especially over in Wales, you're looking near to Bortle scale 1 and 2. So you know that magical moment of looking up and seeing the Milky Way on a lovely clear night? It's going to look pretty fantastic, if I say so myself. But then as the story continues, we go into suburban skies and to major towns and cities, you only begin to see a handful of stars, and also to bring in the mix, the full moon as well. So it's just this showing, this documentation, this changing story of the night. It is happening at a very fast pace. Mega Constellations, this is a story which has been developed over the past 6 years now. So we live in the new modern world. We have technology which fits in our pockets on a day-to-day life to use internet, connectivity, talking to like-minded people around the globe. We need internet, and I respect that. More companies, however, are turning to this technology that appears in our night sky. And so even, you can obtain now internet in some of the most remote regions of the world because of this technology. But I can tell you, as an astronomer myself, if I was to say last year, the number of satellites in low Earth orbit has surpassed the amount of stars we can see from a dark sky place in each of the hemispheres, 4,500 stars. It's quite a scary statistic to think that, isn't it? And it's, a developing picture. There's going to be tens, if not hundreds of thousands of satellites being proposed. So this is the purpose of my talk, is to demonstrate and enlighten an audience to show that are we going to be the last generation that sees the night sky in its entirety? But then we've only got to look at our cultural heritage. This was a photograph that I took fairly recently from the Cornish coast. I love ancient sites and that connection again to the skies. But you've only got to look at the greater picture. This was a half-an-hour exposure. And so if you imagine satellites that are moving across the sky, you've got the gentle light of the Milky Way stretching down towards the horizon, and then we see this cosmic spider web of all these satellites reflecting light out onto our version of Earth. It's quite a powerful image, I would say, that connection of history meeting the new world. Mirrors. This is some of the latest technology that has come to light and only been approved within a month. So if I was to say to you that there are companies out there which are developing mirror technology to harness daylight at night. So covering only a small area, but for purposes of aiding environmental rescue, for using solar technology, this is happening. So this is only a visual demonstration at the moment. But if I was to say to you that companies are attempting the launch of 50,000 of these mirrors into the sky, so we're looking at a change potentially within 10 years, and we see what is happening not only with satellites, but also light pollution and mirrors. Just take a moment to think about that. Just let it absorb. From the very first moment, you remember looking up to a good dark sky and to think this is, in theory, potentially about to change. It makes me think about the major observatories of the world. We need this technology, not only to advance cosmic human endeavor, but what about asteroids, potential collisions with Earth? And if we can't obtain those signals, are we at risk? But this is the scary thing. Naturally, as an astronomer and astrophotographer, I would purvey for image making. But it's not just astronomy that will be affected by this. Nocturnal wildlife. I love wildlife at night, and I encourage you guys to go out and see it for yourself. It's quite fascinating. I'll talk about this example just here. This is a fresh image. This image is less than 2 weeks old. But to go to the Welsh coastline and find bioluminescent jellyfish washing up on the Welsh coastline, and you see this incredible light from this bioluminescence just coming up on the coast, it really is fascinating. But these creatures need the night themselves. They need darkness. So it's not just bioluminescence, but flora and fauna. You get examples of biofluorescent fauna at night, crustaceans, marine wildlife, plantations. Is quite a scary image about what light pollution is doing in the greater scheme of things. But also how bioluminescence in this example can have an impact on the food chain. We're seeing what's already happened with the plastic crisis, but what's happening now with light pollution. So again, I'm very much a believer that if we're inspired by something, we need to protect it and tell the story, take the images. It's a bit dark, I respect that on the screen, but this was about 2 months ago. And so this was a self-portrait in front of the Milky Way, but look at this. Waves lighting up at night. This is bioluminescent plankton, and they thrive in the night. Where the subject of looking out for waves dancing in the middle of the night has gotten so popular, you can imagine it's become more attracted to people wanting to see this. So naturally, you might see a bright white LED being used, obviously to go to the location and see this. But what if I was to tell you that you can actually watch dispersal of bioluminescence because of using this bright white LED torch? And so an importance for using red light. So you're more considerate of interacting with these nocturnal environments. Glowworms. I have been on a hunt for glowworms this year. I love them. I've only got to look at the heritage side to my family and their connection with glowworms, only to see how populations are dwindling terribly, terribly fast. The UK is losing, on average, about 60% of its wildlife population since the 1970s. And so sites like this, which, dare I say it, were more common, are now a privilege to see. So not only to capture the glowworms, but with the backdrop of the Milky Way, and even light pollution using that scale with your lens. Cultural heritage. What if we lose our connection to the sky? This is what frightens me. I love, and I'm sure you guys can respect that, our ancient history and that connection to the cosmos. I wanted to bring up this image here, which I was very fortunate to capture 2 years ago. So this was on the iconic island that is called Rapa Nui, known as Easter Island, more commonly so. And to capture some of the most darkest night skies I've ever seen in my life. And what this experience taught me, and later so with this incredible annular solar eclipse, which is known as a ring of fire, where you can see the moon and that outer edge of the solar disk, the connection this had with astronomy. If this experience demonstrated to me that astronomy brings people together, this was it. You talk in Spanish to like-minded people who have traveled from Chile to observe that solar eclipse, for a friend to help me gain access to one of the most restricted World Heritage areas on the island. And not only that, by talking to like-minded people, you form friendships. You become a part of community. And we want to take that away with light pollution. It's one of these things that, you know, in my time as an astrophotographer, I've understood it's this boundless connection to time that connects us all. And I've got to look back to my own roots and where I come from in the world of astrophotography. This image here is one of my more well-known images, capturing the Perseid meteor shower over Stonehenge. I just think of my journey since I was a youngster at 7 years old, peeping through the eye of a telescope up to the planet Mars, and to think one day that the iconic astronaut Buzz Aldrin would endorse this photograph, and then Tim Peake. And to think of all this effort, to think about your image making, your story, your creative craft, connection to the night. Are we prepared to lose all of this? And this is what I'm trying to advocate for, is by pushing for image making. We have to be inspired by something in order to protect it. And as in the words here, we have to take images of the night sky like we have never done so before. I'm a visual person, you see, and I'm very much a believer by taking more images, we can spread the word, we can grant greater access to the night sky by spreading the message. Guys, I'm trying to make this talk as interactive as I can. If you have got your mobile phone or your smartphone, whip it out and scan this QR code, okay? So you might have heard from Greg earlier, but I'm a delegate of this organization, Dark Sky International. They are a great global collaborative organization which are there to defend the night. So starting off with this principle about light pollution at night, whether that be street lighting, infrastructure, to urban areas and outreach for astronomy and stargazing in towns and cities, but how we can protect our sky, to use less lighting, to put forward to major organizations, governments, what we can do to really make change. So tonight, have a look at that link on your phone and have a little scroll there. Some really inspiring work, I must say. But also, I've just said we need to take as many photographs as we can of the night sky to really evoke change. However, me and Dark Sky International, we've noticed something, that we have needed to put forward principles for responsible astrophotography. If I was to paint a picture, I'm going to label one of the most famous locations for landscape astrophotography, possibly in the United Kingdom. Durdle Door, put your hand up. Who's been to Durdle Door down in Dorset? Yeah, go on, put your hands up. Yeah, quite a fair few of you. And if you haven't, go. So when you go down there at night, it was, for me, shock horror to see bright white LED lights being used going down to that beach. And I don't just mean a handful. If I said to you 100 photographers with bright lights coming down over the hill, it's quite a terrifying picture. And I'm thinking to myself, what is that doing to our view of the Milky Way, but also to nocturnal wildlife, which there were glowworms that night? What is it doing? And so we have labelled these principles for responsible astrophotography by using careful light etiquette to honest representation when taking our images of the night sky, respecting dark sky locations as well. That simple change, which I'll go on to in a moment, the use of the red torch, being considerate about your nocturnal environments. But as the subject takes hold, being responsible for astrotourism. That is very much a growing area where more people want to connect to the night from certain locations.